My title is technically secondary, but I kind of have my hands all over the place. So I work closely with middle school. My background includes elementary. So I'm all over the place. I've been at the agency since June, so I'm fairly new, but I'm really enjoying it. And I'm so glad that you have joined us this morning. And I hope that we can provide you with some valuable information for your own practice, but also to support the teachers in the buildings that you're in.
So when Brenda and I came up with the idea for a webinar series, we're just coming off of COVID, and the climate of the state, according to the data we're receiving, is that we have brand new teachers who have maybe never taught their content area before. They're not sure how to read their document, like standards documents or assessment boundaries. And it just felt like we needed a webinar series to help level that playing field. So you may see some of this information and think, oh my goodness, we're 7 years into the 2015 standards. Why are we talking about this again? But this information might be brand new to some people in your building, or some people that you know. So we hope that going through last session with standards and indicators, and then this session with the foundations of instructional planning, you're able to help those maybe CATE teachers or brand new teachers, or even seasoned teachers that just maybe through the COVID season have forgotten some of this important information. So we're excited to get started today. All right, our agenda is packed, so we're going to move quickly through this today. You'll see, though, that at number 4, you have a break, so you can anticipate that coming up soon. But we're going to work through just a review of indicators and the assessment boundaries, but then we're going to talk about learning objectives and success criteria. All throughout, though, you're going to be able to engage with these items and engage with each other in breakout rooms, so it should be very interactive and helpful. All right, so let's get started. You know, Brenna and I, we met you in the chat. I appreciate you putting your information there. You can expect in these sessions to collaborate and interact with other people in our professional learning setting. We're going to be engaging in reflective practices, and we're going to develop a growth mindset. Now, in order to record all of that information and all of those steps, we're going to drop a note catcher in the chat box. That will be a tool for you to record all of your thinking so that you can go back and share that maybe with the people in your building, but also for your own practice.
Yes, and we do provide renewal credit per session that you attend, but there are a few requirements to receive that renewal credit. That's active participation in the chat or through video, audio, completion and submission of your note catcher, which we'll ask you to attach to your feedback survey today. So when you complete your feedback survey and attach that note catcher, Mandy or I will send you your renewal credit certificate. So let's think for a second about our priorities and our purpose for today. So the Office of College and Career Readiness has 2 division priorities. We have assessments and resources, and that's our goal to support the field. We want to provide help with developing appropriately rigorous assessments, and then resources to help instruction. So we're looking through that lens when we plan these sessions. So our purpose today, we want you to be able to define, describe, and defend the use of learning objectives and success criteria in your instructional planning. Now, I want you to take a second and think about your purpose. Why did you choose to attend this session? You don't have to be here, so why did you sign up? What are your priorities? What's your purpose? And what will make today a success for you? And if you'll take just a few minutes and put that into your note catcher, what are you hoping to get out of today's session? And we'll give you 2 minutes to jot that down in your note catcher. Welcome, Christy. We just had someone else new join us. Christy, we are thinking about our priorities and our purpose and what will be making today a success. So if you want to open that note catcher and make a copy, and you can jot down your thinking there. For everyone else, if I would like to hear from 1 or 2 people in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Let's see. And I would love to just hear, what is your purpose? What do you hope for today? Kimberly, let me know if it doesn't open. It will force a copy, so you have to click the make a copy button once the link opens.
I'll go if that's fine. I am a new instructional coach this year. It's my first year. And previously I was a algebra teacher for 15 years. So I don't have the strong foundational background in the ELA that I feel like I need to have to support my ELA teachers this year. So I'm just trying to come to these sessions and get as much out of them as I can so I can help them better.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Casey. And it just makes my heart so happy that I think that what we've created is going to be beneficial for you, but then also for your teachers. So I'm glad that you're with us. Oh no, Kimberly.
I will download it as a PDF and send it to you real quick.
Thank you, Mandy. It's like, what can we do? Perfect. And if you, Kimberly, since we're having that problem, if you just want to jot your thinking down on a piece of paper on once you get to see the outline, we can work that out later. Okay, so now that you've kind of thought about your priorities, your purpose, and what's going to make today a success, let's do a quick overview of the indicators and the assessment boundaries document. We did kind of dive a little bit deeper into this in our first session, but some people weren't with us in that session, so we wanted to make sure that we gave a quick overview, because before we can address how to craft learning objectives and success criteria, we have to understand the indicators within the standards. So we're going to explore those indicators through a tool called the assessment boundaries. And we just want to make sure we take a second to lay that foundation so that everyone, whether you were with us the first session or not, know where we are moving forward. Mandy, do you want me to continue, or did you, while you're working on that?
I got it sent. It should be going to your inbox now, Kimberly.
Perfect.
Okay, so we know our standards documents represent the overall what of what we expect students to learn. But the indicator, so the standard is the overall what, the indicator represents the grade level what. Now, as coaches, I bet some of that language we think we already know that. We know what standards and indicators are. Overall, as a state, we have gotten a ton of feedback that teachers don't know that. So we can't assume that that's something that teachers know. And we feel that this process, what we're about to walk through, is super important for the teachers in your building. So what is the difference in standards and indicators? Okay, standards represent what students should be able to do by the end of their academic career. So that statement at the top of your standards, that is what they should do at the end of their career. So it's the same from kindergarten through English 4. That expectation doesn't change. However, the indicator is what students are expected to learn year by year. Those have to be measurable, and they also have to show progression. So in kindergarten, you build upon what will happen the next year. And they have to be developmentally appropriate. Now, the thing that these have in common is that they are the foundation for your instructional planning. That should be where all of your lessons are born, is from the standards and indicators. So let's look at an example of the standards. Here we have RL 5.1, everyone's favorite standard, I know, right? It's our inference standard. So Here you'll see in the blue box at the top, this is the overarching standard, what they are expected to do in kindergarten through English 4 as the end of career goal. Now, below it, you'll see grade level indicators. And we just gave you a sampling because this audience that we're with today is quite a wide sampling of different grade levels. In grade 2, you'll see that we're asking and answering questions and making predictions. But when we jump to grade 8, they are actually citing that evidence to support an analysis. That's quite a jump. And if we don't have a progression in indicators, we can't ever get to that. But then we look to English 3. And I mean, this is even a bigger jump. You're having to support your analysis through what the text explicitly says, but also through your inferences, and determine where the text leaves matters uncertain. And then you have to investigate multiple different academic interpretations. You're really taking a huge leap when you go to English 3. However, we want you to see that the indicator indicates what students do at their grade level. The standard is the goal at the end of their academic career. Any questions about that? All right.
We introduced the assessment boundaries document in our first session as a tool that can help us understand the how to the standards and indicators. We know that the standards give us that overall what, the indicators give us the grade level what, but then that still leaves us with, wait a minute, how do I teach this in my grade level? How do I take the indicator and transfer that to instruction? So we have the assessment boundaries document as a tool to help with that. And the assessment boundaries document comes for all grade levels that are assessed by the state at the end of the year. So we're going to very quickly just show what that document looks like across the grade bands. You do have a link to this in your note catcher, but Mandy also just put the link in your the chat for English 2 assessment boundaries, and each grade band is linked in your note catcher. So this is an example of grades 3 to 5. You'll see that it includes the overall what, which is the standard, the grade level what, where you have the indicators for grades 3, 4, and 5. So if nothing else, this is a great picture of the vertical progression for this standards indicators over grades 3 to 5. And on the right is the assessment boundaries insights, and that's the how. This is where your teachers are going to be able to look to see exactly what students need and when they need it. You'll see that the grade 6 to 8 example, it's formatted exactly the same way. You have your overall what, your grade level indicators for 6, 7, and 8, which is your grade level what. And then again, you have your assessment boundary insights, which is our how. What do students actually need? How can I provide that to them as the teacher? And then finally, you have your English 2 example, where you have your overall what, the grade level what, and the how. As we work through developing learning objectives and success criteria today, we're going to refer back to the assessment boundaries document for guidance. So you may want to have your specific grade band assessment boundaries document pulled up and just to the side, because we are going to refer to that. Now, if you're a first grade teacher, an English 1, 3, 4 teacher, a second grade teacher, you may be thinking, I don't have that. I don't have that lovely document. What am I supposed to do? Don't panic. If your grade level doesn't have an assessment boundaries document, you can create a very similar thing by just looking closely at the indicators and breaking them into smaller tasks or goals. So here is a grade 1 indicator example. So we have standard 8, which is analyze characters, settings, events, and ideas as they develop and interact within a particular context. We look down at the indicator 8.1, and it tells us to do a lot of things. As a teacher, I'm going to look at that indicator and break it up into multiple pieces that are going to be teachable chunks, right? help things be less overwhelming, because that's a huge indicator. There's so many things that we need to do and we need to touch on. We need to break that down into chunks. So that might look like describe characters' actions and feelings. And that would become a learning objective with success criteria that I could teach in 1 or 2 lessons. Compare and contrast character experiences with those of the reader. Identify and describe setting. Identify plot, the problem and solution specifically. And then identify and describe cause and effect relationships. So essentially you can create your own assessment boundaries by looking very closely at the indicator and breaking that up into pieces. So let's look at a English 3 example. You have the same standard, but the indicator is analyze a complex set of ideas or sequence of events and explain how specific characters, ideas, or events develop and interact with a particular context. I want you to think for a second about this indicator. How could you break that up into teachable chunks? What do you see within that you could pull out as individual lessons, maybe? What are students being asked and expected to do? Think about that and jot down some of your thinking in your note catcher. We did have a couple people just join us, so I'm going to put the note catcher back in the chat. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to think about those things, jot down, and then I'm going to ask for some answers. You have about 1 more minute. So either in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and talk out. How could you break this up into smaller objectives or tasks? Give me an idea of one indicator insight you could provide to a teacher who thinks this indicator is a little overwhelming. all at once. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly says to analyze the sequence of events, explain how events develop. We actually, in our examples that Mandy and I came up with, have those as well. We broke it down into 4 pieces. Analyze the complex set of ideas, analyze a complex sequence of events. Very good, Kimberly, yes. Analyze how the characters interact within specific content. So you guys, you got it. Explain how specific characters, ideas, or events develop, and explain how specific characters, ideas, or events interact. So it's exactly what you were thinking. And I know that seems very simple, like kind of like a, well, duh, let's look at the indicator and break it up. But sometimes that's not where our mind goes. We think, oh my gosh, we have to do this entire indicator at one time. And that's just not true. It's impossible, as a matter of fact. So the assessment boundaries document drives us to think about indicators in smaller pieces and smaller objectives and tasks that are manageable for individual daily lessons. And for the grades that don't have the assessment boundaries, we can work with teachers to do the same thing, to take the indicator and put it into manageable pieces so that we're still getting to the heart of the indicator. We're still reaching every point the indicator is asking us to do, but we're not trying to bite off more than we can chew at one time, because that's overwhelming. It certainly is. And you imagine if you put yourself in the place of a brand new teacher, or a teacher new to the content, or a teacher who's maybe come through an alternative certification program, a teacher that English is not their first language. You know, think of all those things, how overwhelming it could be to look at an indicator like 8.1 and think, I don't even know what that means, let alone how I can teach it. So somewhere to start to help teachers feel less overwhelmed.
Okay, now we're going to move to the third part of our time together today, where we're going to discuss SMART learning objectives. Okay, so first we have to define what are learning objectives versus what are success criteria. Learning objectives, they refer to the understanding knowledge, skills, or application. Now, the success criteria are those learning performances that we want to see them do, say, make, or write. And they show us the progression students are making towards the learning objective. Now, you're going to explore a little bit more about learning objectives in an article. We're going to drop a link to an article in the chat box. You are going to read this article. You have 8 minutes. We'd love for you to, there are tools on the side where you can highlight or underline, however you want to annotate your text, but read about learning objectives. After the 8 minutes, we're going to ask you to go into breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, you're going to have to define what are learning objectives, describe what learning objectives could look like, but also defend why do we need learning objectives? Why are they important? So for your first set of 8 minutes, we just want you to read the article and annotate. We will come back together at 10:35, and then I will put you into breakout rooms. Okay, so the link should be on your note catcher, but we'll also drop it in the chat. Go ahead and open up your article on learning objectives. You have 8 minutes to read it.
Mandy, is it Kimberly? She may need a PDF copy. You're welcome. And we can go ahead and work on the one, we have, I think, 2 more, so we can go and work and send those to you also. You have about 2 more minutes before we move to the breakout rooms.
Okay, hopefully you had a chance to read and annotate the article. We always like to include some piece of literature for you to read because we feel like that gives you a piece of research that you could take back to your teachers or your audience to validate the learning that took place today. It also levels the playing field. Everybody has the same information now about learning objectives. All right, in your breakout rooms, we'd like for you to define what is a learning objective, describe what should or could a learning objective look like, and then defend why we have learning objectives and what might happen if we didn't have them. You'll talk through this with your group, and then when we come back together, we'd love for you to share out some of your conversations and what you concluded. All right, there are 3 breakout rooms, and we'll send you to those. You'll have 8 minutes to discuss, and you'll have a 30-second countdown before you come back to the main group. Any questions? All right, we're opening the rooms now. I didn't mean to send you to one.
It's okay.
Were they like, what's she doing here?
No, I just said, we're hopping around, so I'll be in and out.
Were they discussing?
Yeah, there was one person who kind of was taking the lead.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
What do you think?
It's good. We're good.
I'll send a message to all. We'll come back together at 10:45.
Perfect.
Okay, I had 3 cups of coffee. Am I okay to go to the bathroom real quick?
Yes.
Is there anything I need to be doing?
No, I think we're good.
When they come back, how many should share?
Maybe we say one person from each group, and then the next time we do this, we can tell them ahead of time, like, whoever has the birthday closest to today will be the person who shares when we come back or whatever.
Okay. Okay, I closed all rooms. They have 30 seconds to come back.
This
Well, hello. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good time in your breakout rooms, talking with your group about learning objectives. Now, what we'd like for you to do is one person from each group Share with us your define, describe, and defend on learning objectives. So, group 2, that was Alexis and Mary Beth, and I'm looking at my breakout rooms, and Kelly. Who would like to share from your group?
I can talk for us. We just talked about a learning objective being a statement that communicates what specifically students should do and that it should be measurable and specific.
Very good. And tell us what would happen if we didn't have learning objectives.
Well, we talked about, when we don't provide those learning objectives, there's not really a lot of clarity around maybe what students are doing and why. We talked about how sometimes teachers talk about it in the beginning, but they don't continuously refer back to it throughout the lesson. So students don't necessarily make that connection with the content that they're doing. And then we kind of delved a little bit deeper. Mary Beth and I and Kelly were talking about how, we're doing a lot of work delving back into PLCs and looking at our assessments. So when we find that we are not clear on our learning objectives, we have the possibility of things being misaligned or subject to interpretation, which we're finding out, with specific standards. And so that's one of the things that we're seeing post-pandemic that we're trying to work to strengthen. And I think we were all on an agreeable page with that. So I appreciated that Kelly brought up, we have to make sure that they're measurable and specific. So we know what we're looking for when it comes terms to assessment.
Absolutely.
Yes, and Alexis, I have found that those assessment boundaries help so much with that alignment. Trying to get it aligned to SC Ready and what the expectation there is. If we don't consider that, especially in our tested grades, sometimes we do have that misalignment and it all just goes sideways. So thank y'all. Okay, group 3, that's Casey, Kimberly, Cheryl, and Rhonda. Who would like to share from y'all?
I'll go ahead and share. Let's see. When we were defining the learning objective, we said that it, and this is pretty much what was stated the last time, but we said that it communicates what the student should be able to do. As Casey pointed out, sometimes it's by the end of the lesson. Other times it could also be by the end of a couple of, like a couple of days.
Yes.
So a sequence of lessons. The other thing that when we talked about describing it, we also highlighted that it should be in learner-centered language. And Casey mentioned, or she brought up the fact that that's one thing we really have to work on with a lot of teachers who are new to the classroom or new to the profession, because they don't have that educational background or, that background in going through educational programs to help them understand how the learning should occur. So now we're spending a lot of time actually helping them to understand that, okay, you can't necessarily go directly by what is in the curriculum guides or anything like that, because sometimes that can include a lot of technical jargon. But here's how we break it down and how we show the progression. We don't start with the whole standard or something like that. We break it up into smaller chunks that are more manageable.
Thank you, Kimberly. Excellent description. I appreciate you saying that about new teachers or new to the profession teachers. That language has to be developed. All right, group 4, Jenna, Christy, or Olympia, who'd like to share with us?
I can share. It was just the two of us because Christy had to step away.
Okay.
And let me make sure I have everything up. So we said our defining of it was that brief statements that describe what students are expected to learn. And then what should it look like? We said clear, concise, specific, learner-centered, measurable. And then for the why, we said to help the instruction stay focused, work with the end in sight, guide instruction, and make sure it's intentional. And we talked about as well, if it was not there, the misalignment and losing some of that intent with your instruction.
Absolutely. The intent of the instruction. I love that. Thank you guys for everybody sharing and participating. All right. Now we're going to take a look at an acronym to help define learning objectives. Now, some of this may be repeat information for you. Maybe you already know about learning objectives. However, we have found that this is so helpful when talking to teachers about learning objectives. So in your note catcher, you'll see all of this information already filled out for you. What we'd like for you to do is to underline or highlight or denote anything that is new for you or that you want to re-emphasize with your staff, or maybe this is just something that you want to remember yourself. So don't feel like you have to write down all of this information. It should be provided for you in your note catcher. All right, so first, learning objectives need to be specific. They need to specify the level or standard of performance that's expected at that grade level or at that course. And again, you're using that student-friendly language. Loading it full of jargon is just going to create more misunderstanding for your students. There are several questions you can ask yourself when you're writing your learning objectives to help make sure that they're specific. My favorite question from these is, what will the person completing the learning objective be expected to do? If you ask yourself that question, then you'll be able to better articulate a specific learning objective that is well-defined and clearly stated. All right. Our next letter in our acronym is M for measurable and observable. I heard several of you reference that in your review of the article. Learning objectives must be measurable and observable. They have to allow for the development of a success criteria that's going to be something that you can measure in the classroom. There are several questions you can consider in regards to your learning objective being measurable. How will I know if the student has reached the goal? Okay, A is our next letter, and A is attainable. How many times have you walked into a classroom and seen a learning objective that's not attainable for that grade? Brenna and I were talking recently. We had a teacher come to us and tell us that she had 13 learning objectives for her one lesson. How can you have 13 objectives in one lesson? That's not attainable for students. So we have to make sure that this is something that can be achieved in that lesson or series of lessons. They need to identify that current level of where your students are and then help them scaffold to that next success. Some of the questions you can consider in regards to making an attainable learning objective. My favorite one is, has this objective been met successfully before? Sometimes we have objectives on the board for weeks at a time, or they're cyclical and you'll see the same objective every month. Well, how can that objective progress in your lessons? But then also, if you have previously met it successfully before, how can we extend that to be a little more difficult for your students? All right, our next letter is R, and that stands for relevant and results oriented. Hopefully, the learning objectives that your teachers are writing are aligned to the grade level indicator, and they address the expected result of instruction. Some questions that you can ask yourself when you're writing learning objectives and you want them to be relevant or results oriented are listed here. And it's always important to make sure that teachers can align that learning objective to what grade level indicator they are accomplishing or meeting or addressing through that objective. All right, and our final letter in our SMART acronym is targeted. It has to be targeted to the student's strengths, needs, and current level of understanding and or skill. I know oftentimes we have seen that we want the same learning objective in every classroom at 8th grade in this building. That's not targeted. We have to target what that class of students needs, what their strengths are, and what their current level of understanding of the standard is in order to adjust for our classroom. So we need to make sure that we are aligning them to the appropriate level of DOK. Not all of our learning objectives can be DOK level 1. We consider, what do students already know? And then what do they need to meet the full extent of the indicator requirement? Now, we could spend a ton of time going through our SMART acronym. In fact, we have an entire session just on the SMART acronym. However, we know that you, as mostly coaches or instructional content specialists at your district, know a lot about SMART indicators. So that we did a brief overview. I hope that that wasn't like drinking from a fire hydrant, but it was a lot of information. Brenda.
And I also put a copy in the chat for you. So if this is something you think would be helpful to provide to teachers, to new teachers, anybody in your building, there is a PDF version linked for you in the chat. Oh. So now we're going to put some of that knowledge to practice. We're going to put you back into breakout rooms. And as a group, you're going to have 5 minutes to read some learning objectives and evaluate their adherence to SMART characteristics. So you're going to decide what is SMART about the learning objectives and what isn't so SMART about them. How could they be refined? Maybe you have to reword them to include these necessary revisions. But as a group, you have to decide what's SMART and what needs to be fixed. And when we come back from your breakout rooms, we're going to have one person from each group share again. And this time it's going to be whoever has a birthday closest to today's date. So you have to figure that out in your group. Whoever's birthday is closest to today's date, that's going to be who shares when we come back out. So there is a link in your note catcher, but there's the link as well to the learning objectives that you are going to evaluate. And we will see you back at 11:03.
I was over here asking you questions and my microphone's off. Is everything okay?
Yeah, this time I did not. I just left them blank space
I'm sorry.
that's okay. It's no big. That's why I was a little slow on my clicks there because I was saving it as a PDF so that I could give them that copy. No, you're fine. I went back and forth like, do I not? But yeah, so no big deal. They now have a full copy already written down.
Okay, thank you. I will make sure to change that language this afternoon.
Yes, and I'll still provide them a copy, and probably between now and then I'll go in and just link those in to the.
I think that's a great idea, because then they could actually go back and do that in a PLO with their with teachers like immediately.
Yep.
Did you come up with the SMART and the valid?
The valid, yes. The SMART, no.
Well, I didn't know either of them, so great job.
SMART, I don't even remember where I pulled it from, to be honest. I don't know where it came from. I think I pieced it together from a couple different places and then, but they weren't my thinking. No, valid didn't exist. So
Mhm.
I had to figure that out, but. All right, combat. Crisis averted.
Sorry.
No, it was, I'm just kidding. It wasn't really a crisis. We was fine.
Phil was probably like, what did you say, Mandy?
Oh, gosh.
I've almost got the email ready. Like, the one you send out at the end with all the links and stuff.
Oh, good.
Almost have that done. I've been trying to work while we talked.
Always get nervous with the 10 a.m. group because we know that they're not just teachers. And so I'm, like keep having to reframe it as like, you probably know this, but think about your teachers. How could you recreate this for them?
Mm-hmm. Nope, I same. Same.
Glad we have enough for breakout rooms though, because I think it's important that they get to talk.
Yes, otherwise how boring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Bring them back.
Yes, Tom?
Yep.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back. All right, guys. So let's start with group 2. Whoever's birthday is closest to today, let me know what you were thinking about those learning objectives. What was smart and what could be refined?
We didn't get so far as the birthday thing, but I'll talk.
Thank you.
So that we really, when we went through and we were still in the middle of it, but we talked about kind of from evaluation what was smart, just you knew what students were supposed to be learning. It was phrased like the first one was phrased in a way that students might be able to explain it, the student friendly, but we really talked about the need for all of them to be measurable. So like
Right.
to understand what does that mean to a student? How do we know what are we looking for? So without more information there, that would be hard.
And I love that you brought up that word understand. We've been banned from the word understand at the State Department because there's literally no way to know whether or not a student understands something. So creating those learning objectives that are observable is so important because otherwise we don't really know. Do they understand? Do they not understand? So that was great that you picked up on that. All right, group 3.
I guess I'll talk this time since Kimberly went last time.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties and didn't really get to discuss because some of them couldn't access the
Gosh.
things. And then I was not doing a good job of getting it out to them either. So, but what I noticed, I felt like the third one was the better of the 3, but I also liked how the second one gave a specific time frame. It said as a result of today's lesson. So I thought I liked that about that particular one. And I kind of picked up on the same thing about the understand and how we probably shouldn't use that to, in our learning objectives, because again, it's not measurable.
Very good. And thank you for noticing about the at the end of today's lesson, because that is a very specific part. It's like someone mentioned earlier, it could be at the end of this unit or at the end of the week or at the end of the lesson. But either way, they know I need to get this today. I need to get it by Wednesday. I need to get it by the time we take our test. But it's giving them that time frame so that they know what the expectation is for them. All right. And our final group.
We didn't get as far as birthdays either. She was, as we were cutting off, going, my birthday is, and that's as far as it got. But I would say that we said very, very similar things. I liked all three of different parts of all three of these. So as somebody else mentioned, I thought the first one felt very kid-centered, very easy to understand, but we also pointed out the word understand that was in there and that it didn't feel measurable. The second one was kind of similar. It also had the word understand in there. The one that we talked the most about, that we liked the most, was the third one. But then, as someone else mentioned, we liked that the second one said, as a result of today's lesson. So they were kind of pieces of all three that we thought were powerful. And if you meshed them together, could come up with a really strong one.
You have your positive. That's exactly right. And you guys hit right at the intent of that activity, that none of them by themselves were super duper great, but if we took those smart pieces from each, we'd have a really strong learning objective. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Now, another thing that Mandy and I try really hard to do during these presentations is to not just reflect and consider the content of the presentation, but also the activities that we have you guys do. We pick them very intentionally, and we want you to think about that through the lens of, as a teacher, an educator, or as a teacher leader. Why have we chosen these specific activities, and how can they help you and help your teachers? So we're going to do a pause and ponder. We're going to stop for a second and think about that evaluate and refine activity. And in your note catcher, I want you to think about what this could look like in instruction. Could you ask your students to do a similar assignment with different content? And what impact would that have on instruction or growth and learning if you did? So take just 2 minutes in your note catcher and think about that. And then we'll have at least one person share out. Okay, Jenna, thank you. Any thoughts on what this could look like in instruction, or what impact an activity like this might have?
I think we've been talking about in our schools, we've spent some time reviewing the data with teachers, but we're also shifting towards student ownership. So even if we have students look at the objectives and have conversations about what this looks like and what they're supposed to learn as they're, planning their goals and looking at that student-centered learning, they could have a hand in that and have some conversations about the importance of the objective.
I agree. And what what valuable information teachers could get from that as well as to what they consider to be student friendly, what they consider to be understandable or observable. So I think that's a great idea. Any other thinking about this particular activity? Right, so we want to show you just one quick example, again, referring back to those assessment boundaries and how you can narrow your focus down into learning objectives. So you can see we have English 2 here. This is standard 5, indicator 5.1. And I took just the very first bullet point, which says analyze text and provide evidence to support their analysis. And I created 3 learning objectives from that indicator. From that indicator insight. So we have, by the end of the lesson, students will be able to define and explain the purpose of text analysis. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain why both text evidence and elaboration should be provided to support text analysis. And then by the end of the lesson, students will be able to provide at least one example of text evidence to support one idea they have about a text and elaborate on that idea. So essentially, this would be 3 different lessons from that one insight, from that one piece of the indicator. So you can see how we continue to break that into smaller pieces. So we want you guys to practice doing the same thing. So we're going to develop some learning objectives. We're going to put you back in breakout rooms, and you are going to be working on a Jamboard. So if you're in group 2, you're going to work on page 2 of the Jamboard. If you're in group 3, you'll be on page 3. And if you're in group 4, you'll be on page 4. On page 1 is an example for you of the expectation. As a group, you're just going to choose one grade level indicator. Doesn't matter what indicator it is, for what grade level, just choose one. Put it at the top of your page, and then come up with 3 learning objectives that could be used to meet the requirement of that indicator. And then you're just going to put the learning objectives right there on the page. Feel free to use the assessment boundaries to help you with that. And then we will come back in 7 minutes at 11:20 to talk about that.
I got a message from Rhonda, and she is subbing in a class right now, so she's intermittent of her ability to participate.
Okay.
And Cheryl Mack, her microphone is not working. So anyway, but I told them we would get them the recording and any information
Yes.
that you're missing.
I also just thought that before since we're recording this, before we send it to anyone, we need to edit out these pieces.
Yep. So that means I need to find some editing software.
I have some. I can do it if you'll send me the video.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Is it for purchase?
No, I think it was for illegal download on my personal computer.
Would you- Oh, I forgot. You're working. Yeah, so you can do all the
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I tried 2 different platforms to do the captioning, and one was for purchase and one the file was too big.
So I've never done the captioning, but I can try and figure it out too, if that's something we need in the future.
You're the best. How long will it take you to edit it?
Oh, that won't take long at all.
Okay.
Because I'm not doing anything but just taking out these little pieces.
I feel better. I feel like we're
But I also think we need to pick up the pace. Or
Yeah.
We're not gonna get,
No, we're not gonna get done.
finished.
I thought about that too. Mhm.
So let's see what we can do.
What can we cut?
have to move quicker. Maybe the break, I mean, not cut the break, but 5 minutes instead of 10.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna change that. I'm really like impressed with that they're having good conversation though.
They are very, very, very. Okay, we're gonna go.
Yeah. And I think in the afternoon, we need to go faster in the beginning and spend more time on the end because I think learning objectives are a more familiar thing than the success criteria part of it, if that makes sense.
Agree.
Okay.
Agree. Where are we? What slide?
Hold on, let me see. 30, 29.
You see him writing stuff on the Jamboard?
No, I don't even have it open.
I'm
Trying
trying
to
to
think.
open it.
What if we, so for the success criteria article, let's let them do that one independently
Mm-hmm.
instead of the conversation, and then just have a whole group conversation. So 8 minutes to read and respond, and then 4 or 5 minutes or less to speak out.
Okay.
We could also, well, I was gonna say we could skip the pause and ponder, but they have a place for it in their note catcher, and I don't want them to be like, we didn't do that.
What time are they supposed to come back to us?
In 2 minutes. Got one group of learning objectives. We may for the afternoon want to give them a specific indicator.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about it, if you've got all these different age groups, they've got to spend half the time deciding what indicator they're going to use. We could do a different one on each slide.
And I think they're putting all theirs on the same slide. No. Okay. No, never mind. I see what they're doing.
We might need to give them another minute or two.
Yeah, because the other two groups aren't doing it at all.
maybe we should pop into those groups and see if they're having any problems.
Okay. I'll join 3.
Okay. Okay, so it's definitely, they're trying to figure out what indicator to do. So that's when we fill out our reflection form, that's our redo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Give them the standard. Yeah, no, my group said we're all having to be pulled for other tasks and we can't engage. And I said, okay.
Okay. Well, group 4 is now on the right track. So I helped them, they're going to a 6th grade informational, they're picking one. So let's give them a couple more minutes to get at least one learning objective on there.
Okay.
And then,
And then we're going to cut the article time down a little bit.
yep. Let's see.
Is there a way we could do a glow or a grow a different way?
That's what I'm thinking. We could also say at the break time, well, I mean, I don't want to do that. I want to say if you need to take a break, take one. But if not, we're going to keep moving forward. I mean, we could just say, hey, since that, that activity, we've learned that, we need to probably provide an objective or indicator that'll help us, some things we need to take away to change. So for this particular one, we're going to skip the glow and grow and reflect process because we want you to be able to do that for success criteria because we see that as a bigger need. So we're going to skip that, go straight to the break.
Casey,
Come back to
Casey, Kimberly, did y'all have a question?
No question. Could I guess, could we both be placed back in our breakout room?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem.
Now I see that's the 3 of us.
Yes. Hey, Cheryl, welcome back. Okay. I'm gonna, let's see, how can I know what I need to do. I'll move you out of your breakout room and then I'll move you back to it. So just give me a second to move you all around a little bit.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm sorry. It was acting crazy.
Mandy,
Yes.
I think the issue was like Kimberly couldn't access the Jamboard and me and Cheryl could access the Jamboard. And then me and Cheryl were kind of confused about what we were doing on the Jamboard.
Okay. Yes.
And that kind of thing. So that's why
No
we
problem.
came back. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you did. Brenna or I will hop in your group and talk through it.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. No problem, Cheryl.
You want to go?
I sure will.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think it's given y'all the opportunity, Kimberly, Cheryl, and Casey, to join your breakout room again. So we can talk through it here in the main session. Brenna, will you share your screen?
I will, and I'm
And
going
I'll
to
show-
move Rhonda back to the main call.
Okay, so on that Jamboard link, if you will go to page 3, and what we wanted you to do was just pick one of the indicators. So any indicator for any grade level and put that at the top. Like if you look at the example page, you'll see that I chose 6.1 and I just put the grade level indicator for E3. And then I wrote 3 learning objectives for that indicator. So if y'all will go to slide 3, that will be yours. Pick any grade level indicator as a group, elementary, middle, or secondary, and put the indicator at the top and then try to write 3 learning objectives based on that indicator. Does that help? Yes. Okay. All right. I will be quiet and let y'all discuss.
Thank you for the clarification.
No
No
problem.
problem.
Ladies, I'm at the elementary level. I'm not sure which level you all are.
I'm 6 through 8. Maybe we could pick upper elementary, like 5th, kind of split the difference.
That will work for me. So I'm looking at the standards right now. Let's see. I'm going to look at 5th grade. And we're supposed to put the indicator, correct?
That's correct. So the indicator and then 3 learning objectives.
Okay.
Hey y'all, group 2 is group 3 is taking a little bit longer. So you go ahead and finish up your break time, and then we'll come back together in about 5 more minutes. So
Okay.
go ahead and take your break. Sorry, friends.
Okay,
all
no
good.
problem.
Okay, so I got the sticky with that on it at the top. Now we just need to come up with 3 learning objectives for that.
Okay, so I guess this is kind of that visible learning that's coming back. So even though the indicator says the students will be able,
Oh, wow.
Hi.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Uh-oh. I am. Okay, y'all are welcome to go ahead and take your break. We're gonna come back in just a few more minutes. Group 3 needed some extra time to work through theirs. So take a break. We should be back together by 11:35 though.
Okay,
Thank y'all. Sorry.
thank
What
you.
time does the class end, Miss Mandy? What time does this session end?
12 o'clock.
Oh, okay, because I'm holding a class. So I'm trying to manage it. The students are outside right now, and I don't want to end it.
No, that's
Trying
okay.
to multitask.
I had another teacher message me and say she was pulled to sub today as well.
Okay,
But I have the recording, and then I'm
Mhm.
gonna email the slide deck and the note catcher, just so any of the resources you saw today, you can
Mhm.
go back and revisit later.
okay, all right. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for being flexible.
Yes, ma'am.
the student will identify the theme and support with key details from a text. And please trust that I'm not the
Okay. Thank you for patiently working through that process. Mandy and I learned some things about our presentation during that process and how we can make that more that activity more clear moving forward. We did want you to have the time to think through how to create learning objectives that were smart. But we are going to monitor and adjust just a bit to make sure that you get that success criteria piece as well. So what we would have done is have you had you all go into the other slides that weren't yours and add a glow and a grow. So something that they did well and an area that they could refine, and then reflect on that. But just for time's sake, we're going to move forward in the presentation just a bit to make sure you get the meat of what we're wanting for you. So we have another article for you, but this one's about success criteria. It's linked in your note catcher for you to look at. If you choose the same, just define, describe, defend activity. But we're going to skip that for now for the sake of time and hop right into the description of valid success criteria. So this is a piece that we really want to make sure we have time for, because it's a piece that's often forgotten and left off by teachers, and it's really, really valuable for our students. So once you have your learning objectives developed, oftentimes that's where teachers stop. They stop right there. Hey, we have my learning objective. It's student friendly. Students know what they're supposed to do and when they're going to have it finished by. Where your success criteria comes in is the teacher look for. It's almost like if you could create a rubric for your learning objective so that you know exactly what you're looking for as a teacher. That's what success criteria are. And it really helps break it down for students, your specific expectations. So we have an acronym for success criteria as well, and that is VALID. So we're going to talk through how to make valid success criteria. And I have put this part of the presentation in the chat for you so that you have the full of what we're going to show you, but you also have a place in your note catcher to jot down any thinking. So we have valid success criteria. The V stands for visible. So valid success criterion is written as a performance of learning. So like we talked about with our learning objectives, we need to avoid terms that are open to interpretation. Understand, learn, grasp. We can observe those behaviors. So when we're creating success criterion, we want to make sure that they are truly visible. So start with an observable action word. Compare, contrast, define, describe, classify, label, justify, predict. Anything that we can actually see. You may want to ask yourself a couple of these questions. Who's completing the learning objective? What am I expecting them to do? Where will it be completed? For example, am I in the classroom? Am I in the library? When should it be completed, and why is it necessary or important? Secondly, we want to make sure that our success criteria are aligned to the learning objective, which is aligned to the indicator. So we have this progression. We have our indicator, our learning objective, and then our success criteria. So it needs to be relevant to the learning objective and point the student toward achievement. So you definitely want to ask yourself, what is the learning objective? Is each success criterion working together to point to that learning objective in a logical and sequential way? We have language as our L in valid. This is accessible language that students will understand. Again, avoid your teacher lingo and terms that are undefined or have multiple meanings. Include those observable expectations and ask yourself, are students going to be able to understand and use this language? Our I is indicator of the level of rigor. So an effective success criterion should indicate the level of rigor at which students are expected to perform. We didn't really talk a whole lot about DOK in this presentation, but that is something that we'll talk about later in this series, is how to figure out what DOK level your indicators are at, and then make your learning objective match that level of rigor. And then your success criteria should match that level of rigor as well. So Ask yourself, what level of rigor am I asking students to perform at, and what tasks, activities, and or teaching strategies can move me toward that. And finally, the D is defined and descriptive. It's clearly and thoroughly articulated. We're specific. There's no room for error. Students know exactly what they're being asked to do. So ask yourself, how could you describe this on a rubric or other assessment tool? What exactly will students be doing, making, or saying? Are there any steps that need to be described in more detail? So that was quick and dirty, but I want to show you some examples now so that you can kind of think through what that actually looks like. So these are my 3 learning objectives from earlier when we talked about the English 2 5.1. Look how I created my success criteria. Again, these are the teacher look-fors. What am I looking for to prove or measure student success? So if my learning objective is by the end of the lesson, students will be able to define and explain the purpose of text analysis. How will I know that students can do that? Well, they communicate an accurate definition of text analysis. In oral and written form, they explain 3 reasons readers might analyze text. They describe in writing 1 example of how they have used text analysis to expand their thinking about a text. Those are 3 specific, observable, measurable success criteria. So when I'm grading them, when I'm looking at them to see, well, did they meet this learning objective? Well, if they've given me an accurate definition, they can talk to me and write 3 reasons, yep, check, and they can describe in writing 1 example, check, they have met this learning objective. And that learning objective was aligned to my indicator. So we know that they are reaching the expectation of the indicator. Same thing for number 2, by the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain why both text evidence and elaboration should be provided to support text analysis. Here are my success criteria. Communicate an accurate definition of text evidence and elaboration. Notice that's DOK 1. They're just giving me a definition. But if they don't have that definition foundation, we can't move forward to higher levels of thinking. So step 2, in oral and written form, explain 1 reason readers might use text evidence and elaboration to support analysis. And then finally, describe in writing 1 example of how you've used this. Moving them through those levels of rigor, specifically and observably. And then finally, my last learning objective, I'm going to ask them, or I'm going to be looking for them to communicate 1 idea about a text in response to a teacher-provided prompt or question. Notice how specific that is. Provide at least 1 example of text evidence to support the idea, and then provide elaboration to support the idea and chosen example of text evidence. So we set our learning objectives so that students know where they're headed. The success criteria is how they're getting there. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I expect. Here's what I'm looking for. And that part often gets left off. So we can't stop just at learning objectives. We need to move teachers into thinking about truly, what is this going to look like? How will I know they have reached the expectation of the learning objective and the indicator that it aligns with? So we're going to think again about success criteria, but we're going to do it a little differently. This time we had set up another Jamboard for you guys, but we've learned a lesson about the Jamboard for this morning. So what I want you to do is to look at the learning objectives that you developed earlier on the Jamboard. So any learning objective that was developed, you can see these are in pink. They have a green, a yellow, blue, any of these on the screen. And I want you to take 1 of them on your note catcher, and I want you to come up with some success criteria, 2 or 3 success criteria. If this was your learning objective, you had it on your board, you talked through it with your students. By the end of today's lesson, students will, what are you looking for to know that they actually met that objective? Be as clear and specific and observable as possible in your success criteria. How will you know that they have met that goal? And I want you to take 4 minutes and develop 2 or 3 success criteria for your chosen learning objective. Right. I'd like to hear from 2 people who would like to share either in the chat or unmute a learning objective that you chose and 1 or 2 of the success criteria that you came up with.
Okay, are we all just very shy?
I think so.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
you have to think, maybe we probably needed some more thinking time.
Well, we did 5 point, ham sandwich. I'm trying to look at 2 screens. Y'all know my screen is very busy, but I know ours was based on a 6th grade standard, and it was going to the other screen. Standard 5, determining the meaning of logical interpretation, meaning and develop logical interpretations by making predictions. It's 5.1 is what it was. Basically, standard 5 indicated 5.1. And I put down here that students will be able to draw at least 2 inferences about the text. I don't know how valid that would be, because it's just them listing or labeling 2 inferences. Do they need any other steps? Yeah. I mean, inferencing is kind of difficult for children, so I know that they will need their own personal experiences in doing so, but they could actually do those they can chart that. They could do it through graffiti wall. It's not like a whole lot of.
So what I liked about your success criteria is that it was specific in that you said 2. We're looking for 2 for you to do this twice. So I think that what you can add is what you were just saying on the graffiti wall, explain 2 inferences and give text evidence,
Mhm.
just being, remember that this is like your rubric, it's your teacher look for. So if I'm walking around with my grade book, check, 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 how do I know they did this? So they've given me a appropriate or accurate or effective explanation of an inference on a graffiti board. So great thinking there. Anybody else want to share?
I will. I'm in her same group, so same standard. But I
Okay,
did the first part, the prediction part, and I said, in response to the text, the student will create and defend 3 predictions and cite the evidence that supports those predictions.
excellent. Yep.
That's the part I
So
missed.
yeah, so you're super specific there. We're responding to a specific text. You've given them the number that you're looking for. So great job there. And I think that if you can help your teachers set this up in their thinking and the way that they plan, where they start with those assessment boundaries, knowing kind of the end in mind, here's the goal. Let's writing a learning objective to meet that goal. And then let's, as the teacher, what am I asking students to do? And what am I going to be looking for? And that's going to really ensure that that instruction is aligned to the assessment, to the indicator, ultimately to the. So we're going to move forward just a little bit to our closure and clarity. And I want you to take a look at your note catcher and think for a second about our time together and our thinking and learning that we've done. And I want you to think about what, so what, and now what. Summarize what you learned. That's the what. The so what is your relevance, the importance, the usefulness. Why did we do this today? And then finally, the now what is how is this going to impact your instructional practices or the work that you do with teachers moving forward?
So you said summarize it, then the so what was?
It's explain the relevance or the
Okay.
importance of the work today. When you've finished that reflection piece, if you'll pop it 8, the number 8 in the chat to let us know you're done.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, just you can let us know you're finished by putting the number 8 in the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As you complete your feedback, we want to take a minute just to say thank you for your participation today. We know that there were lots of technical hiccups, and then there was a fast and furious race to the finish line at the end, but we appreciate your attentiveness and your participation in helping us develop our professional learning series. We would love to have your feedback. So at the bottom of your note catcher, as well as on the QR code here and in the chat, you'll see a link to our feedback form. We would love for you to complete this to give us feedback, how we can get better as facilitators, but also how we can improve this PLO series for others in the field and for our audience of the state. So we'd love to get your feedback there. Also, upon completion of the feedback form, we'll be able to generate your PD certificate that will be mailed to you within the next week. So we hope to get those out just as soon as possible. Yes, Kimberly, I tell you, there are so many links to click on. If Google is blocked for you, it's a mess. So I love the troubleshooting. Very good. But if you have any questions or concerns or comments, you're welcome. We're going to listen and linger for a little while. We'd love to interact with you. Or if there are any questions you have about how we can better serve you or your school or your district, we'd love to hang out and chat. Brenna, anything else?
No, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for bearing with us as we monitored and adjusted, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thank y'all. This was awesome.
Thank you.
I love
I'm
seeing the
really
lectures.
going back to review everything.
Thank
This is
you.
really great stuff. Thank y'all so much.
You're welcome. And remember that anything that we kind of had to skip over, it is linked in your note catcher, so you can go back and access that.
I was looking at that. Thank y'all so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question.
Yes.
Okay, so when we were talking about, well, not really a question, just what I've noticed for the success criteria. So at my school, I'm at Buford. When I talked about that with my teachers, it was hard for them to grasp. So I had to show them a couple of visuals. So I did a presentation just on different pictures that I found off of course, Google, just so that they can see it. But now having the information as to why we're doing, like really why we're doing what we're doing, I could go back to that. But one of the things that we found is some of our teachers, they got it like, okay, this is the objective. This is what I want my kids to be able to do at the end. If they can do these things, I know they're going to be successful. Now what we're finding is in the objective, everyone doesn't understand the key words. So now we're going back. So for instance, theme. So when my kids go to 5th grade, theme is introduced or defined this way. When they go to 4th grade, it's defined this way. So we are a scholastic school with Dr. Dickey. So I don't know if you've heard of him. Okay,
Yes.
So he has really helped us to fine tune that because we do have various definitions of the same word. So now we're cleaning that up so when kids will understand. So for instance, yesterday, 5th grade had to identify the characters, settings, events in order to determine the theme of one of the stories. Well, they understood characters and
Mhm.
settings where they didn't understand events. So then we had to go back and look at the objective first and make sure that those kids understood that. So then when we did the read aloud and understand theme. So they had, was a clearer picture of that, and then they were able to pick that up. So that's what we're finding first. Now I have to backtrack pretty much